What if I told you that some of the most valuable food sources you could possibly grow are hiding in plain sight in abandoned farmsteads and forgotten corners of old properties? Most people drive right past these heritage fruit trees without a second glance, thinking they're just wild plants or worthless old varieties. But your great-grandparents knew something we've completely forgotten: that one mature fruit tree can provide harvests every single year while delivering flavors you cannot buy at any price. I've spent the last 15 years tracking down these forgotten varieties, learning from elderly gardeners who still remember what their grandmothers grew. And I've documented the yields from my own homestead. The USDA's National Clonal Germplasm Repository has been quietly preserving these varieties for decades, and modern nutritional analysis shows that many of these old fruits have nutritional profiles. Wait until you hear about number 7, the medlar, which was prized in medieval times and can feed a family through winter, and I'm getting harvests from a tree I planted just 6 years ago. And number 13 is going to blow your mind. It's a fruit that tastes like tropical paradise, but grows in Zone 4, and mature trees can produce harvests. If you're ready to discover the food security secrets your ancestors knew by heart, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. This channel is all about reconnecting with the practical wisdom that kept families fed and healthy for generations. And I share new heritage growing techniques every single week. So let's get into it. Here are 13 forgotten fruits your great-grandparents grew, ranked from impressive to absolutely life-changing. Number 1, serviceberry, the pioneer's candy. Your great-grandmother called these June berries, and for good reason. They ripen in early summer when fresh fruit was scarce. Native Americans dried them for winter storage and mixed them into pemmican for long journeys. These weren't just survival food. They were celebration food. The Ojibwe people held special ceremonies when the serviceberries ripened because they knew these fruits would carry them through the lean months ahead. Modern analysis shows serviceberries contain antioxidants and fiber. Here's what most people miss. You don't plant just one serviceberry bush, you plant a grove of 3 to 5 for cross-pollination, and by year 4, you'll be harvesting berries that taste like a cross between blueberries and almonds with hints of cherry. But here's the thing. Serviceberries are incredibly versatile in the landscape. Plant them as a hedge along your property line, and you'll have privacy that feeds you. They bloom early with gorgeous white flowers that feed pollinators when little else is available, then produce berries in June when your strawberries are finishing up. The reason serviceberries got forgotten is simple. Commercial agriculture couldn't mechanize the harvest because the berries ripen over several weeks instead of all at once. But that's actually perfect for home growers because you get fresh berries for a month straight instead of being overwhelmed with a massive harvest all at once. Think of serviceberries as nature's candy store that's been waiting in the woods for you to rediscover. Number 2, elderberry, the medicine cabinet tree. Every farmstead had an elderberry bush because grandmothers knew it was both food and pharmacy. European settlers brought elderberry cultivation techniques that Native Americans had perfected centuries earlier. During the 1918 flu pandemic, elderberry syrup was one of the remedies that people used. Here's why it works. Modern research has shown that elderberry extract may help reduce flu symptoms. But here's the thing. You're not just growing medicine. You're growing berry harvests per mature bush that make incredible pies, wines, and syrups. Plant elderberries in the wettest spot on your property, where nothing else wants to grow, and they'll thrive while solving your drainage problems. I've seen elderberries flourish in spots where water stands for weeks after heavy rains, places where other fruit plants would rot and die. Here's what most people miss. Elderberries are incredibly fast-growing. You can plant a small bush in spring and harvest your first berries by late summer. By year 3, you'll have a full-sized shrub producing berries to make syrup. The flowers are edible too. Elderflower fritters were a traditional spring treat, and elderflower wine was considered a delicacy in colonial America. Modern science has shown that elderflowers contain quercetin and other compounds that may support immune function. Think of elderberry as your personal pharmacy that's been hiding in plain sight, just waiting for you to remember its power. Number 3. Gooseberries, the tart treasure. Before refrigeration, every farm wife knew that gooseberries were the secret to extending the fruit season because they store fresh for weeks in a cool cellar. These were the backbone of summer preserving, tart enough to balance sugar, pectin-rich enough to set jams without additives. In Victorian England, gooseberry clubs held competitions for the largest berries, with some varieties producing fruits. The reason gooseberries got forgotten is simple. The federal government banned them in the early 1900s because they were thought to spread white pine blister rust. That ban was lifted decades ago, but most Americans never got the memo. Meanwhile, Europeans kept breeding better varieties, and now we have gooseberries that are sweet enough to eat fresh and completely resistant to disease. Modern varieties like Pixwell and Invicta are resistant to the rust and produce harvests per bush. Here's what most people miss. Gooseberries fruit on old wood, so you barely prune them, and they'll produce for 20 years with almost no care. But here's the thing. Gooseberries actually prefer partial shade and cooler conditions. Plant them on the north side of your house or under the canopy of larger trees where other fruits struggle, and you'll have berries that command prices at farmers' markets. The nutritional profile is good. Gooseberries are loaded with vitamin C and contain anthocyanins that give them their tart flavor and antioxidant properties. Modern research shows these compounds may support eye health. Think of gooseberries as the forgotten gold mine that's been waiting in the shadows for you to strike it rich. Number 4. Quince, the perfume of autumn. Walk into any colonial kitchen in October, and the air would be thick with the incredible fragrance of quinces, a smell so intoxicating that people kept bowls of them just as natural air fresheners. Persian gardens featured quinces as symbols of love and fertility, and quince trees can live and produce for many decades. This wasn't random. It was by design, because quinces were the foundation of winter food storage. The ancient Greeks called quince the golden apple. Here's why it works. Quinces are so high in natural pectin that they'll set any jam or jelly without additives, and they store fresh for months in cool storage. A single quince can gel a whole pot of low-pectin fruits like strawberries or peaches. Modern science has shown that quinces contain vitamin C and antioxidants. They're also rich in fiber and contain tannins that give them their astringent quality when raw, but transform into complex, wine-like flavors when cooked. Plant a quince tree in heavy clay soil where other fruits fail, and by year 5, you'll harvest fruit that transforms into jellies, pastes, and preserves. Here's what most people miss. Quinces need to be cooked to be edible, but once you cook them, they develop this incredible rose-colored flesh and a flavor that's like a cross between apples and pears with floral notes. The reason quinces got forgotten is simple. They can't be eaten fresh like modern fruits, and our convenience culture lost patience with foods that require preparation. But that preparation is part of the magic. Making quince paste or membrillo is like creating edible perfume. Think of quince as the perfumed treasure chest that's been waiting in old orchards for you to unlock its secrets. Number 5. Persimmons, the sugar tree. Native Americans called persimmons the sugar tree because when properly ripened, they're very sweet and were dried into fruit leather that lasted all winter. Every southern farmstead had persimmon trees because they fruit late in the season when other fresh food was scarce. Captain John Smith wrote about persimmons, but the secret is waiting until they're completely soft and jelly-like. Here's what most people miss. American persimmons are completely different from the Asian varieties in stores, with complex flavors. The tannins that make unripe persimmons mouth-puckeringly astringent completely disappear when the fruit is fully ripe, leaving behind sweetness. The reason persimmons got forgotten is simple. Commercial agriculture couldn't handle fruit that has to be perfectly ripe to eat, and shipping soft persimmons was impossible before modern packaging. Plus, most people had bad experiences eating unripe persimmons and never tried them again. Plant both male and female trees for pollination, and by year 7, you'll harvest fruit from each female tree. Modern nutritional analysis shows persimmons contain beta-carotene and fiber. They're also rich in manganese and vitamin A. But here's the thing. Persimmons are incredibly drought-tolerant once established and actually produce better fruit with some stress. They're perfect for that spot in your yard that's too dry for other fruits. The trees are also gorgeous in fall, with leaves that turn brilliant orange and red. Here's why it works. Persimmons ripen after the first frost, which converts the starches to sugars and breaks down the tannins. You can speed up the ripening process by putting them in the freezer overnight, then thawing them. The texture becomes custard-like, and you can eat them with a spoon. Think of persimmons as nature's candy factory that's been waiting in forgotten fence rows for you to remember how sweet life can be. Number 6. Cornelian cherry, the vitamin C powerhouse. Roman soldiers carried dried cornelian cherries as trail food because they knew these tart red fruits prevented scurvy and provided sustained energy on long marches. Every monastery garden in medieval Europe included cornelian cherry trees because monks understood they were both medicine and sustenance. These weren't just survival food. They were strategic food. Modern analysis reveals that cornelian cherries contain vitamin C and antioxidants. They're also rich in anthocyanins, compounds that are found in red wine. Here's the thing. Cornelian cherries ripen in late summer when your other fruits are finished, extending your fresh harvest season by weeks. They're also incredibly versatile. You can eat them fresh when fully ripe, make them into jams and jellies, or dry them for winter snacks. Plant them in the coldest spot on your property because they're hardy to zone 4 and actually need winter chill to fruit properly. A mature tree produces fruit that makes incredible jams, wines, and dried snacks. The trees are also beautiful ornamentals, with early spring flowers that bloom before the leaves emerge and gorgeous fall color. The reason cornelian cherries got forgotten is simple. They take 5 to 7 years to start producing, and our instant gratification culture lost patience. But that's exactly why they're so valuable. Once established, they'll produce for decades with almost no care. Here's what most people miss. Cornelian cherries are related to dogwoods, not true cherries, and they have a unique tart flavor that's like a cross between cranberries and sour cherries. They're perfect for people who find most fruits too sweet. Modern science has shown that cornelian cherry compounds may help regulate blood sugar and support cardiovascular health. Studies have found that cornelian cherry extract has anti-inflammatory properties. Think of cornelian cherries as the patient investment that's been waiting in old European gardens for you to rediscover compound returns. Number 7. Medlar, the winter apple. Medieval Europeans called medlars winter apples because they were harvested hard in late fall, then stored until they softened into custard-like sweetness during the cold months. Chaucer wrote about medlars, Shakespeare mentioned them, And every manor house had medlar trees because they solved the problem of fresh fruit in winter. This wasn't random. It was brilliant food preservation technology disguised as a fruit tree. The process is called bletting, and it's like controlled rotting that transforms the hard, astringent fruit into something magical. Here's why it works. Medlars are bletted, meaning they're stored until the flesh becomes soft and sweet, like a natural pudding that keeps for weeks. The enzymes in the fruit break down the cell walls and convert starches to sugars, creating complex flavors. Modern science has shown that the bletting process concentrates antioxidants and develops compounds that have anti-inflammatory properties. The flavor is indescribable, like apple butter mixed with wine-poached pears with hints of cinnamon and cloves. I'm getting harvests from a tree I planted just 6 years ago, and each medlar tastes like a cross between apple butter and wine-poached pears. Here's what most people miss. You harvest medlars after the first frost when they're still hard, then store them in a cool place until they soften. It takes 2 to 4 weeks, and you know they're ready when they give slightly to pressure. The reason medlars got forgotten is simple. They require patience and understanding of the bletting process, and modern consumers wanted fruit they could eat immediately. Plus, the name medlar comes from an old French word that became associated with crude humor, which didn't help their reputation. But here's the thing. Medlars are incredibly hardy and disease-resistant. They'll grow in poor soil and tolerate neglect better than almost any other fruit tree. The trees are also beautiful, with large white flowers in spring and gorgeous fall color. Think of medlars as nature's time-release dessert that's been waiting in forgotten orchards for you to rediscover patience. If you're loving these forgotten fruit discoveries, smash that like button and make sure you're subscribed, because we're just getting to the really amazing ones, fruits that will completely change how you think about what's possible in your own backyard. Number 8. Jujube, the Chinese date. For thousands of years, Chinese farmers have valued jujubes because one tree can feed a family, and the dried fruits store for years without spoiling. Silk Road traders carried jujubes as travel food, sweet, nutritious, and practically indestructible. These trees were valued in ancient Chinese culture. Modern nutritional analysis shows that fresh jujubes contain vitamin C, and dried jujubes have potassium. They're also rich in antioxidants, fiber, and compounds called saponins. Here's what most people miss. Jujubes are incredibly drought-tolerant once established and actually produce better fruit with less water. They're perfect for hot, dry climates where other fruits struggle. The trees can survive cold temperatures and still produce fruit. The reason jujubes got forgotten is simple. They were associated with Chinese immigrants during periods of anti-Asian sentiment, and most Americans never learned to appreciate them. Plus, the fresh fruits have a short shelf life, so they never made it into mainstream grocery stores. Plant a jujube tree in your hottest, driest spot, where other fruits struggle. And by year 4, you'll harvest fruits that taste like crunchy apples, when fresh, and sweet dates when dried. Modern varieties like Li and Shanxi Li produce fruits with crisp, sweet flesh. But here's the thing. Jujubes are self-pollinating, so you only need one tree to get fruit. They're also incredibly productive. A mature tree can produce harvests annually. The trees have a weeping growth habit that makes them beautiful landscape specimens. Here's why it works. Jujubes have an incredibly long harvest season, from late summer through fall. You can eat them at different stages of ripeness, green and crunchy like apples, or fully ripe and soft like dates. They also dry naturally on the tree if you leave them, concentrating the sugars and developing complex flavors. Think of jujubes as the desert oasis that's been waiting in Chinatowns and old immigrant gardens for you to discover true resilience. Number 9. Pawpaw, the American tropical. Before bananas were shipped north, Americans satisfied their tropical fruit cravings with pawpaws, creamy, custard-like fruits that taste like a cross between banana and mango, but grow wild from Georgia to Michigan. Lewis and Clark survived on pawpaws during their expedition, and Native Americans had many names for different varieties. Every pioneer homestead planted pawpaws because they were the only tropical-tasting fruit that could survive northern winters. The Shawnee people valued them because the flavor was so otherworldly compared to other native fruits. Here's the thing. Pawpaws are the largest native fruit in North America, and they contain more protein than many other fruits, plus antioxidants. They contain amino acids and are rich in vitamins A and C, magnesium, and potassium. Modern research at Kentucky State University has identified pawpaw compounds called acetogenins. These same compounds make pawpaw trees naturally pest-resistant. They're related to tropical custard apples and produce natural insecticides. Plant pawpaws in partial shade where other fruits won't grow, and remember they need cross-pollination, so plant at least 2 different varieties. By year 5, each tree produces fruit. The reason pawpaws got forgotten is simple. They don't ship well and have a short shelf life, so commercial agriculture abandoned them. The fruits also ripen unevenly and fall from the tree when ripe, making mechanical harvesting impossible. But here's what most people miss. Pawpaws are incredibly easy to grow once you understand their needs. They prefer rich, moist soil and partial shade, making them perfect for woodland gardens. The trees are also beautiful, with large tropical-looking leaves and interesting maroon flowers. Here's why it works. Pawpaws fruit in late summer, when most other fruits are finished, extending your harvest season. The flavor is so unique that once people taste a good pawpaw, they become obsessed. It's like having a tropical vacation in your backyard. Think of pawpaws as America's hidden tropical paradise that's been waiting in woodland edges for you to taste what this continent can really offer. Number 10. Mulberry, the Silk Road survivor. Chinese emperors planted mulberry trees not just to feed silkworms, but because the fruits fed people during famines and the leaves provided medicine during plagues. Every frontier homestead had a mulberry tree because children could climb up and eat their fill while parents worked in the fields. These weren't just snack trees. They were childcare and nutrition rolled into one. Modern analysis shows mulberries contain resveratrol, iron, and vitamin C. They're also rich in anthocyanins, fiber, and protein. Here's why it works. Mulberry trees produce fruit for 3 to 4 months straight, giving you fresh berries from June through August when other fruits are finished. But here's what most people miss. You don't pick mulberries. You spread sheets under the tree and shake the branches, harvesting fruit in minutes. A mature mulberry tree produces harvests of berries annually, and they're perfect for everything from fresh eating to winemaking. The berries are incredibly versatile. You can eat them fresh, dry them like raisins, make them into jams and jellies, or ferment them into wine. The reason mulberries got forgotten is simple. They're messy when they drop, and suburban homeowners associations banned them for staining sidewalks. Commercial agriculture also couldn't mechanize the harvest because the berries ripen over such a long period. But here's the thing. Mulberry trees are incredibly hardy and adaptable. They'll grow in poor soil, tolerate drought once established, and produce fruit even in partial shade. They're also fast-growing. You can plant a small tree and have fruit within 2 to 3 years. Here's what most people miss. There are different types of mulberries with different flavors. White mulberries are sweet and mild. Red mulberries are tart and complex. And black mulberries have the most intense flavor. You can plant multiple varieties to extend your harvest season and enjoy different flavors. Modern science has shown that mulberry leaf extract is being studied for blood sugar regulation, and the fruits contain compounds that may support heart health. Think of mulberries as the generous giant that's been waiting in old farmyards for you to remember that the best things in life are free. Number 11. Hardy kiwi, the smooth surprise. While everyone knows fuzzy kiwis from New Zealand, hardy kiwis have been growing wild in Asia for millions of years, and they're smooth-skinned, grape-sized versions that are actually sweeter and more nutritious than their tropical cousins. Russian botanists brought hardy kiwis to North America in the early 1900s, but they got lost in the shuffle of 2 world wars. These vines were planted at research stations and forgotten until modern homesteaders rediscovered them. Hardy kiwi cultivation was developed in various countries as part of agricultural programs. Here's why it works. Hardy kiwis contain vitamin C, potassium, and they're one of the few fruits that contain vitamin E. Hardy kiwi antioxidants are present compared to common fruits. Plant male and female vines on a strong trellis system, and by year 4, you'll harvest smooth kiwis that pop in your mouth like sweet grapes. Here's what most people miss. You eat hardy kiwis skin and all, and they store fresh in the refrigerator for months. But here's the thing. Hardy kiwis are incredibly vigorous growers. One vine can cover a huge trellis and produce fruit for decades. They're also beautiful ornamental plants with heart-shaped leaves and fragrant flowers. The reason hardy kiwis got forgotten is simple. They take several years to start producing, and you need both male and female plants for pollination. Most gardeners lost patience or didn't understand the pollination requirements. Here's what most people miss. Hardy kiwis ripen in fall after most other fruits are finished, giving you fresh vitamin C when you need it most. The flavor is intensely sweet tart, like a cross between kiwi and grape with tropical notes. Modern research shows that hardy kiwis contain enzymes that aid digestion and compounds that may support immune function. They're also incredibly hardy, surviving cold temperatures. Think of hardy kiwis as the smooth operator that's been waiting on research station trellises for you to discover convenience and nutrition in one perfect package. Number 12. American hazelnut, the protein powerhouse. Before grocery stores, every farm had a hazelnut grove because these nuts provided protein and healthy fats that kept families strong through winter. Native Americans managed hazelnut groves by burning undergrowth, creating park-like forests that produced nut harvests. European settlers learned these techniques and planted hazelnuts as living fences that fed livestock and families alike. Modern nutritional science shows that hazelnuts contain protein, healthy monounsaturated fats, and vitamin E. They're also rich in folate, magnesium, and copper. Here's the thing. American hazelnuts are completely different from European varieties, with better cold tolerance and resistance to eastern filbert blight that kills imported hazelnuts. They're also more flavorful, with a rich, buttery taste. The reason American hazelnuts got forgotten is simple. Commercial agriculture focused on European varieties that failed in most of North America, and people assumed all hazelnuts were unsuitable. Meanwhile, native hazelnuts kept growing wild in fence rows and forest edges, waiting for someone to remember their value. Plant American hazelnut varieties like Jefferson or Theta, and by year 4, you'll harvest nuts per bush that store for years. Modern breeding programs have developed varieties that produce nuts with American hardiness. But here's what most people miss. Hazelnuts are incredibly easy to grow and require almost no care once established. They're also excellent wildlife habitat, providing food for birds and small mammals while producing nuts for you. Here's why it works. Hazelnuts fix nitrogen in the soil through their root associations, actually improving the soil for other plants. They also produce nuts relatively quickly compared to tree nuts, like walnuts or pecans. Modern science has shown that hazelnut consumption is linked to improved heart health, better cholesterol profiles, and reduced inflammation. The nuts are also naturally gluten-free and make excellent flour for baking. Think of American hazelnuts as the protein bank that's been waiting in native plant sales for you to invest in true food security. Number 13. American persimmon, grafted varieties, the ultimate homestead tree. While wild persimmons are incredible, the grafted named varieties that old-timers developed will absolutely blow your mind. Varieties like Early Golden, Proc, and Sukis were selected by farmers who understood that one perfect persimmon tree could provide harvests. These trees live for many decades, require zero pesticides, thrive in poor soil, and produce fruit that's very sweet. I'm talking about harvests per mature tree. Fruit that's sweeter than dates, nutritious, and completely unique in flavor. The old-timers knew what they were doing when they selected these varieties. Early Golden ripens in September and is very sweet. Proc produces fruits and has flavors. Sukis is very sweet with complex spice notes that develop as it ripens. Modern analysis shows these varieties contain beta-carotene, fiber, and antioxidants. They're also rich in manganese, potassium, and vitamin A. But the real magic is in the flavor compounds. These grafted varieties have been selected for complex sugars and aromatic compounds that create unique flavors. Here's what most people miss. Grafted persimmon varieties fruit 3 to 5 years earlier than seedlings, and you can have fresh persimmons from September through December with the right variety selection. Early Golden ripens in September, Proc in October, and late varieties like John Rick ripen in November and December. The reason these varieties got forgotten is simple. They were developed by individual farmers who never commercialized them, and the knowledge died with the old-timers. These varieties were passed down through families and local communities, but they never made it into mainstream nursery catalogs. But here's the thing. Specialty nurseries are now propagating these varieties again, and you can plant a piece of agricultural history that pays dividends for generations. These trees are incredibly long-lived and productive. There are persimmon trees planted in the 1800s that are still producing crops today. Here's why it works. American persimmons are incredibly adaptable and hardy. They'll grow in poor soil, tolerate drought, and actually produce better fruit with some stress. They're also naturally pest and disease resistant, requiring no spraying or chemical inputs. But here's what most people miss. You can extend your persimmon season by selecting multiple varieties and using storage techniques. Early varieties can be eaten fresh, while late varieties can be stored for months in cool conditions, giving you fresh fruit well into winter. Modern science has shown that persimmon compounds are being studied for health benefits. The tannins that make unripe persimmons astringent actually have antioxidant properties once the fruit ripens. Think of grafted persimmon varieties as the ultimate homestead inheritance that's been waiting in old farm records for you to claim your birthright of real food independence. Here's what I want you to understand. Your great-grandparents weren't just growing fruit. They were growing food security, medicine, and flavors that money can't buy today. Every one of these forgotten fruits represents knowledge that took generations to develop and minutes to lose. If this opened your eyes to what's possible in your own backyard, smash that like button, drop a comment below and tell me which forgotten fruit surprised you the most. Are you Team Persimmon for that incredible sweetness, Team Pawpaw for the tropical flavors, or Team Mulberry for the sheer abundance? Make sure you're subscribed and hit that notification bell, because I'm constantly discovering more heritage varieties and food security secrets that your ancestors knew by heart. Remember, sometimes the most valuable food sources aren't in the grocery store aisles or fancy farmers' markets. Sometimes they're hiding in plain sight in old farmsteads and forgotten corners of the countryside, just waiting for you to rediscover the abundance your family once knew.